Hi, this is Mike McCrease. Welcome once again to Advanced Photoshop. And in this lesson we're going to learn how to create an oil painting or an illustration that looks like an oil painting directly from a photograph. And this will look so much like an authentic oil painting that you won't be able to tell the difference between it and the real thing on the printed page or on a computer monitor. It's really quite impressive, and if it's done correctly, it will be indistinguishable from a real oil painting. We're going to explore a couple of brush features too. One brush feature is the mixer brush tool, which is hidden underneath the brush tool, and it allows you to blend colors in an image much like you'd be mixing with real oil paint. And other brushes that we're going to take a look at, we're going to open up the brush panel actually, and you'll see that you've got a wide variety of brushes here, and many of these brushes are new, beginning with version CS6. So we're going to take a look at those and play with those just a little bit. I'm going to start out by just creating a new file just to practice with. Doesn't matter what size. Again, I'm just practicing with this. And I've just got my regular paintbrush selected. And as you know, that you've got your standard brush picker here at the top where you can scroll through a variety of brushes. And you've also got your brush presets panel over here off to the side. And again, you've got some pre-made brushes that ship with Photoshop. But you get a lot more choices when you use the brushes panel, which I can click this button right over here, or I can press F5 to open it up. And we've got a lot of brushes to choose from. And many of these brushes are new, beginning with Photoshop CS6. I'm just choosing just a regular round brush here. And down in the brush preview area, you see that we can change the shape of this brush, and we can change the angle of it as well. You can change the hardness of it. You can see the preview is displayed in the preview window at the bottom. And you can change the spacing. You've also got bristle brushes. We've got 7 bristle brushes across the top here and into the second row. And if I click on one of those bristle brushes, and you can tell they're bristle brushes because they look like actual paintbrush tips, and that's what they're designed to mimic, is these actual oil painting brushes. So I can click on, for example, the round point brush, and when I do so, I get this little brush preview. It's actually a live tip brush preview is what it's called. And if I were to paint, as I click and drag, you see that the tip of the brush changes in the live tip brush preview according to how I work with the brush. I'll choose another brush, and you see how its preview looks a little bit different. And when I paint from side to side, the little brush tip moves from side to side. I can change my stiffness on the brush, and this way you can see how the brush responds to that. So it gives you an idea of what your effect would look like if you were using a real brush, for example. Now up here at the top, we have an option for using a graphics tablet, such as a Wacom tablet. If you've got a Wacom tablet, this is a great time to use it, because with the Wacom tablet pen, Photoshop's brushes will respond to pressure, rotation, and angle. So you can get really expressive with it. Sadly, I don't have a Wacom tablet, and I doubt that many of you do either. But we can do this assignment just using the mouse. It's just that it goes a lot more quickly and is a lot more fun if you happen to have a graphics tablet. Let's take a look at the Erodable tip brushes. Again, this is something new to CS6. And with this Erodable tip brush, it acts like an actual pencil or crayon, to where you start out with a sharp point, and then as you draw with it, that tip wears down and the brush stroke becomes thicker. And you can control the sharpness of the brush, or the softness of the brush, excuse me, by using this little slider over here. I'm going to set it to 100% softness and zoom in here just a little bit. And I'll just paint for a little bit. And as I paint, you see that on my live tip brush preview, it's starting to get thicker. And you'll also notice too that the brush stroke is getting thicker. The more I paint with it, the thicker it gets. So you can compare this stroke right here, which is where I started with, to this one right here, and you see how thick it has become. And you can see how the tip is worn down here in my preview. To make it sharp again, I just click the Sharpen Tip button, and then we start anew. I can also adjust my spacing and make dashed lines like this. Let's take a look at some of the bristle brushes. And with the bristle brushes, again, you can paint however you wish, and you can see that by adjusting the stiffness, how the brush responds to those different options that are set. And you can adjust the length of the brush and the number of bristles. Fewer bristles or more. Perhaps a better example would be with a round blunt brush, and you can see with just a few bristles the effect that you get. And then if I increase the bristle strength, we've got more bristles. And you can also change the angle of your brush, as well as the thickness of it and the stiffness, as we mentioned, and the spacing. Now, if you get tired of seeing this little live tip brush preview, or if it gets in your way, then I can come down to the bottom here and click on this little button and hide that, just to get it out of the way. Now I can also right click at any time and change my brush size on the fly, or the hardness, or choose a different brush. So quick ways to switch brushes. And the nice thing about these brushes is that they're not only available just for the paintbrush, they're also available for the eraser brush, your clone stamp tool, your pattern stamp tool, any of your brush tools you can use that with. I'm going to go ahead and close this file, and we're finished with that. And I'm going to open up one of the files that are available to you on Blackboard, some photographic portraits. This is Portrait 1, and I've got several other pictures available for you there. You can use those, or you can use a picture of your own, but I'm using one of these because they are professionally shot photographs, and so the lighting is good, there's no distracting elements in the background, and it's a nice clean picture to begin with. So this is one I'm going to start working with. Before I start my painting project, I'm going to set up my my brushes. I'm going to go to the mixer brush tool, and it's the little brush with the water droplet above it. And I'm going to go along the top here and take a look at these settings. I'm going to make certain that this first option right here, load brush after each stroke, is turned off. And when it's turned off, you'll see a little checkerboard pattern right over here. I want to make certain that the next option, the clean brush after each stroke, is turned on. And we're going to max out the wet, load, mix, and flow options. For our brush, we're going to choose the round blunt brush, which should be the third one on the top row of your brushes. I'm going to set the bristles to 50% and the stiffness to 75%. These are good settings to begin with, but you'll want to do some experimentation on your own. You want to try different brushes and different settings to get different effects. But this is, like I say, this is a good standard setting to begin with. Now I'm going to start out by creating 2 new layers. The first one I'm going to call opaque. And the next one I'm going to call painting. On my opaque layer, I'm going to fill that with white. And I'll turn that off for now and make certain that my painting layer is active. Now with this mixer brush tool, what it does is it's going to take the colors from the background layer and blend them together as though they're actually wet paint, and it's going to put them on our painting layer. One other option that we need to check is make certain that we have chosen to sample all layers. I think I may have forgotten to mention that. So make certain that sample all layers is selected so that our paint will be on that layer. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here. I'm going to start, well, I'll just start on the nose. What we're going to do is with our paintbrush, we're going to start by probably outlining the features, and then we're going to go in and start painting in more details. And I'll show you what's going to happen here. I'll use a smaller brush. May have to drop that down to pretty small brush size. And wherever we see a line, that's what we're going to paint. And again, I wish I had a graphics tablet. This would be so much easier and it would go so much more quickly, but I don't. We'll just kind of outline like that. I'll increase my brush size now, and I'll start painting around the nose. And as I paint, like since the nose is at an angle like this, the side of the nose is an angle, I'm going to make my brush strokes go to the side like this. And on the nostrils and the tip of the nose, since they're round, I'm going to make my brush strokes go round. Let's zoom in a little bit more so we can see better. And again, what the mixer brush tool is doing is taking those pixels on the background layer, it's blending them as though they were actual wet paint, and it's pasting them onto our paint layer. Now I'm going to turn on my opaque layer, and you can see what I've painted. So periodically I will turn this on. And you want to make certain that by the time you're finished with this, that a good 95% of your image is covered with paint. A few specks of white showing through is fine. But let's go back. And you may have to go in, see like where I'm changing where I'm painting and bringing painting from the dark to the light. You see how it's bringing that dark paint up there? Let me undo that for a second. If I go back to my brushes panel, and I drop that stiffness down and paint, you see how much more dramatic it is. So by making the stiffness greater and then painting, it's not going to blend in so much. So you will need to go in and change that from time to time depending on what the areas that you're painting. And one thing I don't want to do is to get in a big rush and take a huge brush and just slapdash paint all over the place. Otherwise, you're going to have a really, really lousy product. You're not going to gain any accolades for doing mediocre work. So take time to do this and do it right. And experiment. Experiment with different brushes, different brush settings. See what you like. See what works best for you. And smaller brushes are going to be your best ally here. Now, when I come in and work, say, a larger part of the face, let's say the cheeks, for example, I can get a larger brush and I can paint those things in pretty quickly like this, but I would be wise to go back into that with a smaller brush and add detail. So I'm going to drop my brush size down here. Might drop my stiffness down and see if that makes a difference, and it does. Maybe it's a little too stiff there. Let's bring it back up a little bit. And this way, with the smaller brush, even when down as small as 6 pixels, then you can get in some really nice details. So basically we work from the general to the specific is the way I was taught when I was in college and painting. So again, using a large brush, painting in very quickly in the broad areas, and then as we work the details, we'll come back in with a smaller brush and bring those in. And again, you can see what happens if you drop the number of bristles down. See the type of brush stroke that you might achieve this way. And just kind of enjoy the process. Experiment. See what you get. Now the eyes are going to be the most important part. Again, I'm just kind of breezing through this real quick just to kind of give you an overview of what's happening here. But I will spend some time, quite a bit of time actually, making this thing look really polished before I'm finished. But the eyes, very important. With the eyes, we're going to use a much smaller brush. And we're going to go in, and I would start just by kind of outlining them like this. Zoom in and get the iris of the eyes there. Get this catch light over here. And as I mentioned before, using a tiny brush to add the details. And I may, in this case, want to go back in there and lower the stiffness of the brush just so that I can get these colors to kind of smear around a little bit more in these detailed areas. And I'm just pressing F5 to toggle my panel open and close so I can get to it very quickly and easily. Don't waste a lot of time. But lots of attention needs to be paid to the eyes in any portrait, whether it's a painting or whether it's a photograph. The eyes are the most important part, so we don't want to do a slapdash job on that. And then periodically, like I say, we'll turn on the opaque layer to see how much we've painted. And you see I've got quite a bit more to do over here. Anywhere we see white, that's part of the area which we have not painted. So this is going to take a while. So you want to spend a good deal of time on this. I'm going to speed things up here just for the sake of this video to keep it from being too lengthy. And it should be a fun process for you. Just kind of relax, get into the process and enjoy it. If you've ever had any experience working with oil paints, you should especially enjoy this because it's just as exciting as the real thing without all the mess. I'm going to cut over to the hair here and kind of paint that, and you can kind of blend some of that hair in, the color of the hair in with the skin. Again, I'm going to use a smaller brush here, kind of Bring that in like this, and that in over there like that. And we just kind of work those in. Again, a small brush, like I say, is going to work really nicely for doing the hair. Okay, some time has gone past. I've spent several hours working on this, and this is what I've got so far. You can take a look at the various parts of the image, and you can see my brush strokes on it. And I've had to go in and change the various properties of my brushes to get this nice painterly effect. And I think you'll agree it looks a great deal like a real oil painting. Take a look at the ears, the brush strokes in the ears, around the mouth, the eyes, and the nose, how solid everything appears. And we can see the individual brush strokes. Down here around the neck, I chose to be a little bit looser down over here because this is a part of the painting that is not the most important part, and so we can be a little more general there. But on the facial features, we want to go in and do some nice detail. Now I'll go in and I'll turn on my opaque layer, and you can see that I've covered up almost the entire image with paint. About 95%, as I said, is covered up with paint. The little bits of white that are showing through, when I turn off that opaque layer, that's the part of my original background image will be showing through it. So it fills in. The background image is going to fill in those white areas. But again, you want to make certain that most of the image is covered up with paint. Now I'm going to show you a little technique to where you can add stray hairs to the image. You may or may not want to do this, but just to show you how it's done, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to the painting layer, and I'll create a new layer. I'll just call that stray hairs. And I'll go to my paintbrush. I'm just going to use the regular paintbrush this time. And I'm just going to use a 4-pixel brush, just a standard round brush. Zoom in a little bit more. And on that new layer, I'm just going to paint in some hair. Kind of crudely done here. That's one of the reasons I don't use this technique too much, but we can try it and see how it works here. And then on that layer, I'm going to go to my filter menu, and I'll choose Other and Maximum. And in the panel that opens up, I'll set the radius to 1 pixel. You can try bringing it up to 2, but we tend to lose everything that way. But 1 or 2 pixels, and click OK, and you kind of get a stray hair effect there. If you want to, you cut your opacity down a little bit. So that's just a little technique you can try. Again, I don't like this, at least on this image, so I'm just going to toss that in the trash can. Okay, so now that we are finished with our painting, I need to make it look a little more three-dimensional. I want those brush strokes to have some depth to them. So, making certain that my opaque layer is turned off, I'll go to my top layer, and I'm going to merge these layers. Control Alternate Shift E or Command Option Shift E on the Macintosh, and merge those layers together. I'll then convert this new merged layer to a smart object. I'll apply a filter. I'll choose Filter, Stylize, and Emboss. And you can see how it makes it look kind of 3D. You'll probably want to set your height to about 3 pixels. You can experiment a little bit. I think 3 is going to work pretty good. You can experiment with the amount. You can experiment with the angle. And then I'll click OK. I'm going to remove all the color because it did leave a little bit of a color shift there. So I'll create an adjustment layer for hue and saturation. Clip it to that layer, and then we're just going to pull the saturation all the way down to take all the color out of it. Then I'll change the blending mode of this layer. Make certain that you're on layer 1 at this point and not the hue and saturation layer. Change the blending mode to overlay because overlay ignores gray pixels. And what that leaves you with is just the texture of the image. Before and after. You can see how it adds quite a bit of texture. And if it's too strong, all you have to do is double click on this emboss layer right here and maybe pull your settings down a little bit or adjust them as you see fit. One more thing that I would like to do is tweak my colors a little bit. The colors are much as they were in the photograph, and I'd like to have my colors a little more saturated. So let's go to the top of our layer stack, and here I'm going to add another adjustment layer for hue and saturation, but this one I am not going to clip to the layer because I want it to affect all the layers beneath it. And here I'll just increase my saturation a little bit. Not going to get too crazy. Just like that, just to bring out those reds and yellows a bit. And if I want to, I can change the background color. Since the background color is blue, I can go to my blues and maybe shift them towards the green side, just to change things up a little bit. So there's my finished oil painting, and it looks pretty good. Once again, I want to encourage you to take the time and the patience and spend a lot of time with this. Make it look really, really nice. You'll enjoy the process. It can be a nice meditative Zen process if you allow it. And you should come up with a really, really nice piece that I think would be certainly suitable for your professional portfolio. So send me this PSD file, and I look forward to talking with you soon. This is Mike McCrease.